Special Report, Hi-Ho Silver War Room Analysis, John Edwards by the Oak Island Compendium. Researcher John Edwards presented his theory regarding a Freemason/Rosicrucian/Knights Templar association and believes he has discovered information that indicates that Masonic code was encoded in certain writings. He believes this code and information was hidden and suggests that the Ark of the Covenant was buried on Oak Island. Edwards is a teacher from Maryland who stated that he spent the last 30 years studying symbology relating to Freemasonry/Rosicrucianism/Templars. Edwards claims this Masonic code is hidden and only recognizable by fellow Masons. He references a Masonic song and refers to portions of it and suggests that the Ark of the Covenant was hidden on Oak Island. The song is listed as Royal Arch Ode, 19th century, with no other information given about it. The compendium has investigated and learned that the ode was written by James Gates Percival, 1795 to 1856. Mr. Gates was a writer-poet but worked primarily as a geologist. It appears that Mr. Gates wrote this Masonic ode but wasn't a Mason himself. Percival was described as very shy and withdrawn and preferred to be by himself. Most likely this would preclude him from being an active participating member of Freemasonry. Mr. Gates' background doesn't seem to suggest he had any involvement with Oak Island, but he did visit Nova Scotia at one point as a brief advisor to a mine in Londonderry for the extraction of iron ore. Interestingly, one of the owners of the mine was Charles Dixon Archibald, who at one time was the head of the Truro Company on Oak Island. Although it doesn't appear Mr. Percival was involved with the island itself. Edwards goes on to talk about a couple of books that he feels have the hidden Masonic code in them. He refers to the works of Josephus Flavius, published in 1812, and the Holy Week, published in 1763. The latter was in French. Edwards shows some examples and abbreviations used as code. Then a very interesting picture and description are shown. It apparently comes from another French book entitled Instructions générales en forme de catéchisme by A. Avignon, 1824, that is not owned by Edwards. A sketch of what appears to be Oak Island is depicted. This sketch is very interesting, but when exactly it was sketched is the big question. It shows what appears to be Oak Island with lines that indicate possible lots, a ship pointing towards the swamp, and a box-like figure pointing to the Judres Cove area. Also, the term FLX 157 is listed. Compendium investigations seemed very doubtful of the authenticity of this sketch until we learned the following information. What was mentioned next was perhaps the most significant part of the entire presentation in the opinion of compendium investigations. The names of Daniel Dyson and John Eason were mentioned in relation to this sketch and the previously mentioned book. John Eason, a Scotsman, came to Nova Scotia from London in 1737 as Master Artificer to the British Army garrison at Annapolis Royal. An artificer was a military mechanic who carried out repairs. He was attached to the Ordnance, Artillery and Engineer Service to be employed in the construction of military materials as well as repairs. He received land and a mill that he operated for grist and lumber. He also worked with Dyson and Company, merchants of Annapolis Royal, and later became a partner with the company. Daniel Dyson carried on the largest mercantile business conducted by any person or firm in the county of Annapolis in the middle of the 18th century. Apparently, Dyson and Company had cooperative relations with the French, Acadians and the Micmac, and participated in commercial transactions and trade between Annapolis Royal, New England, Halifax, and the French at Louisbourg. These transactions with the French involved contraband trade. Eason and Dyson were Freemasons and part of the First Masonic Lodge of Nova Scotia. Their business partner Erasmus Phillips was also Grand Master. In December 1757, Eason was captured by an Acadian Micmac war party during a raid on Annapolis Royal and taken as a prisoner of war and remained in Quebec until 1759. Interestingly, the head of the war party was Brossard de Soleil, the famous Acadian freedom fighter and privateer who is suspected of possible involvement with Oak Island. Years later, Eason was in Boston at the time of the Boston Tea Party and wrote home to his son James in December 1773, briefly describing the event. During the course of their business dealings, Dyson and Eason were involved with Joshua Morga. Compendium Investigations believes that Morga was involved with a smuggling operation that used Oak Island as a transfer and storage location. It's documented that Morga failed to acquire insurance on a ship called the Wren that was owned by Eason Dyson and Erasmus Phillips. The ship was lost, and the three men wanted to be compensated by Morga, who was in charge of the voyage. Morga agreed and paid the debt. Morga had been made the victualler to the Royal Navy, managing the British supply of provisions at Louisbourg, which it's likely how he became involved with Eason and Dyson. In 1749, Morga moved from Louisbourg to Halifax. Morga was engaged as a merchant, rum distiller, victualler, slave trader, smuggler and privateer. Governor Edward Cornwallis confronted Morga about his suspicious business practices, which included trading with the French at Louisbourg. Morga had powerful allies and escaped this scrutiny. Another one of Morga's close associates was Jonathan Prescott, the Oak Island lot owner. Morga had many business dealings in the Mahone Bay area. Morga also was a Freemason along with Eason, Dyson and Prescott. It's very likely that Eason and Dyson not only knew about Oak Island, but Eason possibly worked there at some point with his artificer carpentry experience. The mention of these two men in association with the sketch of Oak Island opens up a distinct possibility that the Masonic code that was used involved smuggling and Oak Island. Compendium Investigations is continuing this research and will update you with more information as it is discovered. We also have parallel research that seems to connect with this line that will be brought to you very soon. Please visit www.theoakislandcompendium.com for this article and our other content regarding the Oak Island mystery. Good day from the Compendium. Daniel and Charlotte,